Hello, folks. Welcome back. Chris in Central Pennsylvania. The site of political parties in South Africa that ostensibly exist for the poor to right the historical wrongs of the past, who care about the dispossessed and the forgotten people of South Africa. The site of yesterday dancing and toying and jumping for joy at an increase in value added tax, which is a consumption tax. And who does the consumption tax hit most disproportionately? Consumers and the poor. The sight of them dancing and jumping and toying, all excited that they've increased taxes against ordinary South Africans, was vile and repulsive. Anyone that still deludes themselves that the African National Congress actually cares about the citizens of South Africa ought to be paying attention to what happened yesterday, the 2nd of April, 2025, when these parties got together and less than 200, less than a majority of Parliament voted and won the vote 192 to 184 to increase the value-added tax. They claim it's temporary, but we know this. The United States imposed an excise tax on telephones, something that was a complete luxury at the turn of the 20th century, when only a handful of Americans had them, the wealthy. Of course, everyone has a telephone now. That excise tax stayed in place for well over a century. Yeah, we paid a tax for the Spanish-American War that ended a century prior. Yeah, America's one foray into the imperial world. Anyway, the sight of South African politicians toying and dancing, cheerful and happy that they've just imposed a consumption tax on the poorest of the poor, is shocking. Also, the racist behavior of members of Parliament, the leader of the Pan-African Congress, getting up and saying that, basically saying that to listen to our former oppressors speak for the poor is not believable. Something along those lines. Your former oppressors. Once again, folks, this racist bigotry nonsense going on. There are no oppressors in the Parliament of South Africa, unless you want to consider the ruling party to be oppressors. The only person who sits in Parliament today who was in the Parliament during the apartheid era is the leader of the Freedom Front Plus, who just became leader, and that's Dr. Corné Mulder, who served faithfully in the Parliament before 94 and since 94. No one else is there. These so-called oppressors that they're arguing against, the so-called revolution they're seeking, is against themselves, the ruling party, which is now a plurality party, not even majority party, but arrogantly ruling as if it's the majority party. Another consequence of this budget yesterday was the ANC making these declarations that the DA will have to be kicked out of the Government of National Unity. But the Government of National Unity, folks, is not an ANC creation. It's an ANC/DA creation, and the ANC illegitimately invited a bunch of other parties to join it. That was an agreement reached by the DA and by the ANC to form a coalition. And then the ANC went behind their DA partners' backs and invited all these other people like Tani Pat and the Good Party into this multi-party grand coalition, the Government of National Unity. The ANC has betrayed the Government of National Unity from the moment that the agreement was reached, time and time and time again. They've lied to the public, they've lied to their partners, they've excluded their partners, all the while claiming that they're working as some sort of coalition. It's utter nonsense, because the ANC views the Government of National Unity as those who signed up to it must be good little serfs, do as they're told, because you're essentially extension members of the ANC. So therefore you must vote for their bullshit budget, which increases taxes against the poor, while they profess to be supporting and defending the poor and lying to the world. Well, that's not how a coalition works. The other parties, the Freedom Front Plus, Nkata Freedom Party, Patriotic Alliance, Democratic Alliance, are not subalterns of the ANC. They are independent parties that have agreed to work together. Unfortunately, there is no working together with the ANC. The arrogance, the haught, the unbelievably disconnected and cognitive dissonance of this party is shocking, to say the least. But that's what you have. This will be the downfall of South Africa, the arrogance of the African National Congress. It's the same arrogance on display in the relations with the United States, telling us that they sent representatives from DERCO to the United States to set the Americans straight on policies in South Africa. No, we're perfectly capable of reading modern standard written English and have read your laws. They're racially discriminatory, they're immoral, they're unconstitutional under your constitution, and you can sit there all day and try to tell us that you have a responsibility to right the wrongs of the past. You're not righting the wrongs of the past. You're perpetuating the wrongs of the past by discriminating against people based on their skin color. That is, by definition, racist. Racist. There's no confusion there. And those are the policies of the African National Congress, which they promulgated and which they're implementing across the board. Discriminating against ethnic minorities. Your BEE is racist. Your behavior is shockingly pathetic. it is in many respects as bad or worse than the National Party. At least the National Party was a minority trying to oppress a majority. When a majority oppresses a minority, this is how we get the things like people don't want to talk about. Well, yesterday's budget is an embarrassment. All they've done is put more money in the hands of caterers, and Action SA's behavior is puzzling to say the least. What exactly came of this? They claim that there's no VAT hike, but all the media is saying there's a VAT hike. So I think we're all confused. It's time to get someone on from Action SA. We'll see if we can't pull that off and find out why they went in agreement with this budget. They're not members of Government National Unity. They're not obliged to be members. They can vote for any legislation they want or against it. But their votes help secure. You take those 6 away from Action SA, that gives the votes for 188, and that makes the votes against 190. It would have failed. Without Action SA, this budget would have failed. And it should have failed because it targets the poor with value-added tax. And those low-information voters who continue to vote for the ANC against their own best interest really need to get their heads checked, because you've basically signed a suicide pact for the demise and unraveling of South Africa. What say you, South Africa? What say you, world? I know one thing. A lot of caterers are happy, very happy. More money that they can pilfer. South Africans, now not just taxpayers, will be the ones paying for this, but every South African, including illegal aliens who buy things. You'll be paying. You'll be paying. And you can't avoid it. Cheers, folks.